October 20th, 2004, Ubuntu 4.10 Warty Warthog kind of set a new standard for what a Linux distro at the time could actually be. And it makes sense why. Canonical had access to resources that most distros, like even now, have nothing even remotely close to. Canonical was bankrolled by a multi-millionaire from South Africa who also went to space once. This is a true story about Mark Shuttleworth. This is not a joke. Since then, Ubuntu has been kind of just a really popular option for new users, for experienced users, for server administrators, for basing other distros off of. It has just been a really popular option to go with. So much so that for a long time, Ubuntu kind of set the look of Linux. Any appearance of Linux in media was most likely either Ubuntu Unity or Ubuntu's modified version of GNOME. Whilst Canonical has made some choices which I'm not exactly a big fan of, for example the pushing of snaps and then replacing deb packages silently with those snaps, or you have things like the Steam snap, which is, at least to the best of my knowledge, still pretty broken, or frankly just a lot of things about what's going on with snaps. Part of me is slightly concerned about this going on. Ubuntu is growing faster on Windows 11 than on native Linux PCs. This was published just a couple of days ago, but is based on an interview from a couple of months ago. That interview was sadly behind a paywall, and also wasn't even the main topic of the interview, so most people actually have no idea that this was going on. From John Seeger, VP of Engineering at Canonical, in a year, the growth in our WSL numbers is significantly higher than the growth in desktop usage numbers. Following that up with, I expect to see more Ubuntu WSL users than native Ubuntu users over the coming months. More people running Ubuntu through WSL than people just running Ubuntu as their operating system. Now, before you run off with this is specifically about Ubuntu, not Linux as a whole. However, if Ubuntu is thinking there's going to be more WSL users than native users, I would not be surprised if the same thing is kinda happening with Fedora, with Arch Linux, with various other things as well. Going on further to say, WSL enables Windows users to install Ubuntu for use within their Windows environment. Once installed, users interact with Ubuntu through the terminal app, and what you're running literally is Ubuntu. Your home directory is mounted with Ubuntu, and you can pull Windows out of this terminal to your desktop as in actual Windows, as on-screen Windows. I expect to see more Ubuntu WSL users than native Ubuntu users over the coming months. This is especially true for anyone doing ML or AI work. We're already hearing lots of devs who have no choice but to get a Windows machine from their employer, but then find themselves needing to do AI or ML work with WSL. This is a lot simpler. Ubuntu and Canonical are obviously not opposed to this, but it's not something that they are doing themselves. They provide it, they make it available, it is, in WSL you can go and use that, but Microsoft are the ones here that are making some pretty big plays, and this is something that Microsoft has been working on for a very, very long time, and I think a lot of people do themselves a giant disservice treating the Microsoft of today like it was the Microsoft of the Steve Ballmer days, from the days of the Halloween documents, which, in case you don't know, were a series of leaked internal memos that basically outlined Microsoft wanting to end Linux, wanting to end open source, wanting to just entirely destroy these concepts because, from their position, they were threatened. They were threatened by Linux, they were threatened by open source, they saw where things were going and thought, we can't let this happen, this is going to destroy our hegemony. And you know what? They were right to be afraid because Windows is not the platform that a lot of developers choose. If Linux is an option, they're going to go with Linux. If Mac is an option, they're going to go with Mac. For a lot of people, they will use Windows because they don't really have a better option to go with. And not just Linux, but open source as well has entirely changed the way that developers actually do things. There was a time where really important libraries, really important compilers, they were proprietary, and in many cases you had to go and pay for them. there was a time where backends were powered by typically proprietary versions of Unix. It was normal, again, it was normal to pay for a compiler. Some of that stuff does still exist today. Things like MATLAB, for example, have been grandfathered in. But if you go to, let's say, a web developer and suggest that some key library they need is gonna have a fee attached to use it, is gonna be proprietary, they're gonna look at you like you're crazy. Also, a lot of that stuff that existed before, a lot of that stuff that was at one point proprietary, has shifted to a more open manner because that's the way that developers do things now. And I think for a very long time, this has been the way that developers have wanted to do things. Because let's say you're working on, you're working on some sort of project, you rely on a library. Let's say you have a open library and a proprietary library. And let's say there is a bug in both these libraries. Let's say it's the exact same bug. If it's the proprietary library, like, what do you do about that? You report the bug, and then you wait. You wait. You wait. And maybe they fix it. Maybe they don't even document that it was fixed. And then, hopefully, at some point, things are good. If it's open source, though, this is a much more preferred state. Even if you don't really care about the code 99% of the time, that one time that you need to go and fix something, well, you can fix it. You can then go and submit the patch, and it'll be fixed for other people. But most importantly, it's fixed for you right now. Understand, Microsoft has been going in this direction for a very, very long time. Let's go all the way back to 2014 with the creation of the .NET Foundation. This shepherds the open source development of the .NET platform. I remember it wasn't even that long ago that .NET Core and .NET were two entirely different things. .NET Core was the stripped-down Linux version, .NET was the proprietary Windows version, and then at some point, it just became like one unified open platform. Then you have the very often memed upon back in 2015, Microsoft loves Linux, which goes into Linux in the data center, Linux on Microsoft Azure, things like that. Then in 2016, you have Microsoft launching WSL. WSL, which is the biggest play here whatsoever. This lets you run a whole Linux operating system without ever leaving Windows. It's integrated into your Windows, everything works nicely together, you can make use of your Linux applications, you can make use of your Windows applications, you can use them together, and you have a perfectly serviceable experience. Then in 2018, Microsoft acquired GitHub, and while nowadays is very much a big part of the whole AI training stuff, they realized at the time it was way more valuable to just not really rock the boat. They could have said, okay, for basic features like hosting a repo, you gotta pay for it. But like many companies out there, they've realized that offering something for free when you have a large enough user base actually makes you more money in the long run than charging for it. And that doesn't even make any sense when you initially think about it, but when something is free, you get people in the door, and then you can find various different ways to make money off them. In the case of GitHub, that's AI training, and then making that money through various other things like subscriptions and all these things. And you can also sell additional features on top of this. You can charge the enterprise users and various other things like this once you have people used to this environment, locked into that environment. Then in 2025, after being asked about for a very, very long time, the Windows subsystem for Linux is now open source. This is issue number 1, the very first issue on the WSL repo, all the way back in 2016, and for a long time the answer was just, we gotta look into this, maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't do it, who knows? And then eventually, after nearly 10 years, it actually happened. Then in 2026, something that Microsoft has talked about quite a number of times, but, a lot of people don't often believe them. Microsoft talking about being the trusted platform for development, turning Windows into the best platform for developers. Like with GitHub, the landscape has obviously drastically changed since they were first doing things like the .NET Foundation, Microsoft loves Linux, all that sort of stuff. Now, in large part, AI is heavily involved here, but also Linux and open source are very, very key parts of this. If you're concerned about Microsoft, I think you do yourself a massive, massive disservice to think the Microsoft of today is afraid of Linux, is afraid of open source. In fact, I think it's actually the complete opposite. And I think at this point, the whole idea of Tripoli, embrace, extend, extinguish, where you embrace the technology, you extend it, you change it, you add in like proprietary additions that people rely on, and then you extinguish it, you kill the platform, and then you have control of them. I think at this point, that whole idea is kind of a distraction. At one point, yeah, that was exactly what Microsoft was doing, but now I don't think that's the case. Because what's really going on is Microsoft is taking this open source technology, is taking Linux, and then just embedding it directly into their platform. They're not adding in like weird custom things to it that people rely on. They are literally just taking the thing and putting it in Windows. They're not adding in these like weird changes that lock you into the platform and make it so it seems like it's Ubuntu, but it's not actually Ubuntu. There's some like weird custom shell. In fact, when it comes to the shell, when it comes to Unix tooling, they're actually making use of UUtils on Windows as well, which is the same tooling that Ubuntu is using. The goal here is not to change it so you're locked into the platform. That's a distraction. The goal here is to not give you a reason to ever think about the other platform, because if Windows has everything you want from Linux, if you can literally just use Linux on Windows, like, why would you go over to Linux? If Windows provides you everything Linux does, there's no need to extend it, there's no need to extinguish it, because you are now the thing they wanted. If Windows has everything that you want from Linux, what reason is there to go to Linux? Yes, there is the moral operating system choice, and yes, if you really don't like AI, you might go to it then, but outside of that, what would actually convince someone to go over when they already have everything they would have gotten? That right there, that I think is the real end goal. Maybe, just maybe, I'm overthinking it. Maybe it is totally fine that Ubuntu is going to be more popular on WSL than it is literally just running Ubuntu. And it's probably going to happen with other distros as well. And, you know, nothing to be concerned about here. We'll see. We will see. Come back to this video in a couple of years and tell me what took place. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. So if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe, let me know your thoughts down below. Am I crazy? Maybe, probably, but hey, there's a chance. There is a chance. If you're on mobile, go hype the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Silly Bear Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and what? Some Linux? Want some Linux? WSL wants... There we go, want some Linux.